It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined today by Chris Ungar. He is the Vice President of the California School Boards Association, also a member of the school board at San Luis Coastal Unified School District. I want to talk about local school districts.
Yes.
We'll talk specifically in this county, San Luis Obispo County, 3 school bonds on the ballot. They each needed 55%. San Luis Coastal, Atascadero, a more right-of-center community, and Questa Community College, all passed. Lowest passage rate, 60%.
Yeah, and the community, the people that were behind the bonds, were really pleased with that. I know our district passed the bond with over 70% of the electorate, $177 million, about $140 million or so will go to our 2 high schools because that's how much work each of the high schools needs. The rest of the money will be spent throughout the district to improve our infrastructure to bring us up to 21st century standards.
But I have to ask you, if I were doing prognostication and saying, how much would the bond pass by in San Luis Coastal? I would have said 70%. It's a coastal community. If you would have asked me about Atascadero, I would have been surprised if it did not pass.
Right.
They got 60%.
Yeah.
That's not close.
It's not close. And they would have had to have had 55%. There are two different ways you can do bonds, a 66% bond or a 55% bond. The 55% bond has some more restrictions on it.
Right.
But their bond was actually a renewal of the bond that they had.
It's Atascadero.
60%.
It's Atascadero.
But you know what? And I'm pleased to say here in San Luis Obispo County, that shows that people respect and understand the needs of their schools. I thought the surprising one, by the way, and you're right about Atascadero because our local newspaper, the Tribune, didn't support it. The one I was more concerned about was Questa. There was so much controversy about Questa and whether the Questa bond would pass.
Well, it passed
and
with
it
61.
Passed with 61%. And Questa really needs it too. For our viewers who aren't in this area, what we're seeing is Questa wants to start right now because they've got so much backlog. On
Remember, they had an accreditation crisis.
And they had an accreditation crisis, which they brought themselves out of, and which they say, and I have no reason to doubt this, is now a model for community colleges that are having those same kinds of problems.
I want to talk about the election more generally. As we know, there was a heated election for Superintendent of Public Instruction. The New York Times covered it. I mean, the lowest of down ballot races, the New York Times was covering it, and the polls were very close going in. In the end, the incumbent Democrat, Tom Torlakson, defeated another Democrat, Marshall Tuck, a reformer, but a close race, 52-48, closest of all the statewide offices. Kind of bucking a trend. A lot of incumbents nationwide in that position were losing. What's your sense of what happened with that position?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that happened with it. I think, first of all, there was $30 million spent on an election, down ballot, as we talked about, for a post that really doesn't have much power, actually, whose main job is to administer the State Department of Education, which is all about compliance.
But think about this. If I may say, I mean, there's no question that Marshall Tuck was making noise about reform.
Yes.
If he had won, the reform agenda would have been front and center.
The reform agenda absolutely would have been front and center. Now, interesting, I was going to go back to your original question was what happened? Well, part of what happened was $30 million spent on this race, which is an amazing amount of money. In my school district, that is almost half of our annual revenues. Now,
but spent on both sides.
Spent on both sides by interest groups, not by the candidates themselves. So the interest groups for Torlakson, CTA, California Teachers Association, the AFT, SEIU, CSEA, those are all unions that have employees in school districts. On the other side, on the Tuck side, we're seeing the Broad Foundation, Walton,
charter
groups, exactly. So they both, now interestingly enough, again, what the analysis I read was, what happened? CTA got the vote out. So that 180,000 votes that Torlakson won by, a lot of that could be attributed to the fact that CTA has the list and they got the people out to vote.
So does this say to you that reform of education in California is an issue that is not going to be on the front burner?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
really?
not. No. First of all, if you read what Torlakson said, Torlakson actually calls himself a reformer.
Yeah, but on issues, look, I'm not taking a position on either candidate, But look, on issues that are most important to the CTA, teacher tenure, teacher dismissal, that's the Vergara case, and the CTA has dug their heels in. And that is what gets suburban moms the most worked up, that their teachers are being given lifetime tenure, and the best teachers, the youngest teachers, they're being dismissed. So I would be shocked if there's reform on that issue.
Well, see, I would disagree with you on that.
Please.
I think that those issues will remain front and center. If you think about what not only Tuck, but Kashgari were talking about, their main issue was the Vergara case.
But they both lost.
They both lost. However, if I think about the money that was behind Tuck and the interest that Kashgari had in that, Kashgari's famous commercial, The Drowning Child, Kashgari rescues him. The implication is Governor Brown doesn't care about kids because he wanted an appeal of the Vergara decision. I don't believe this is going away, Brad. I believe that if
there
we
was
don't
analysis, by the way,
Right.
which said that Kashgari was really, in the end, trying to help Marshall Tuck.
And that I hadn't read that. Doesn't surprise me. I find that interesting. I think that we have not seen the last of Marshall Tuck. I don't know about Kashgari.
They're
young.
both young.
He is.
They're both in their early 40s, I think.
And he is on fire. Now, let's talk about some of the things that Tuck discussed.
Right.
One of the things that we as school board members really feel strongly about is reforming the education code. Now Tuck was a significant supporter of charter schools, and he was actually, I believe, the president of the Green Dot Charter Schools down in Los Angeles. What he talked about was essentially things that we on our school board levels have talked about. If a loosening of the ed code is good enough for charter schools, and we believe that will improve education for all kids, why isn't it good enough for public education?
Because the unions don't want it.
You know, I can't say I can't give you that as a specific reason. What I can tell you, one of the things I think about is legislators have to make a name for themselves. What's another way you can make a name for themselves? You get a law passed. Let's do an education law. You know, I was given for my birthday last year a copy of the 1924 Education Code, and it was about this thick. You look at the Education Code today, it is at least as big as the Yellow Pages. So we're talking
even with
thousands
LCFF?
of laws. Even with LCFF.
Because doesn't that decrease the number of requirements coming down from Sacramento?
No. What LCFF does is it changed the way the money flows to schools. So instead of having the categorical requirements, it said, schools, here's the money. You do what you need to do to get students to achieve. Education code is law. I'm not sure, Brad, that pieces of the education code that are the compliance pieces, which is what we have to deal with every day, were actually taken out. So you can't say that a special education student doesn't have the right to achieve, or the laws relating to special education, or the laws relating to Title I, which is actually a federal program. We would like to have more flexibility. We think that's important. But yes, in terms of fewer categoricals, there are fewer categoricals, but we're still responsible for things.
In 2016, will we see an initiative on the ballot to eliminate teacher tenure?
You know, I think we could. I believe that if there is not significant movement in Sacramento toward reform of teacher tenure, teacher seniority, those things that we've talked about before, there could very well be a ballot initiative. And
it may not go well for the teachers.
You know, and then all bets are off.
His name is Chris Ungar. He is the Vice President of the California School Boards Association and also a member of the San Luis Coastal Unified School District. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.